Well, thank you all for returning for part 2. Without wasting any time, let's get right into the build. Well, I have the panel for the flat side done. Just a piece of 80 thou styrene. I had to chamfer the back edges with a large mill file. If I get my straight edge and put it across the top, it just touches both tubes while staying flush with the flat panel all the way. And once I've glued that in place, I will just fill those grooves there and then file it flat afterwards. But there's a few things I need to do before I attach this. Well, I've prepped the window openings. It's just a case of putting some styrene around inside on the back. It really doesn't matter what thickness it is. Just need a little bit of a ledge to glue the window frame to. I've done the same with this side. This one, I put 2 strips down there. I filed angles on the back to fit snugly against the round tubes. I started off by leaving it a little bit proud on the front so I could file it down and get a nice corner. Well, I have my front and back side panels glued on. There's the interesting side, which unfortunately is away from the viewer, and the plain side. The rubber cement is set out fairly well. I've still got these grooves in here and I need to fill those. Well, I've had another go at filling these grooves. This time I used some Tamiya putty. It seems to work quite well. Anyway, that is the main silo completed. Time to get on with the annexes. The side walls, I used JTT concrete block sheet. I put a backing of 40 thou, and then where the parapet walls are going to be visible from both sides, I use more concrete block on the back. So it has an overall scale thickness of about 8 inches. Well, I've got the office annex assembled. I braced up nice and firmly inside. It just slips in there. The roof, I drew around a couple of tubes to get the shape here. It's laminated from 2 pieces of 30 thou styrene. The top one fits snugly between the parapet walls and the other one between the supports and locks it in place, like that. I've still got to do a lot of detail work, but right now what I want to do, get all 3 annexes to the same state as this one before I continue. Over the past couple of days I've got the other 2 annexes done. Here's the warehouse and the rail dump shed. Anyway, the corrugated roofing, I'm using a product from Helgen. It's even got steps in it where the sheets have been overlapped. It's a little bit on the thick side, so what I'm going to have to do is get a file or a razor blade or something and scrape a notch in the back to thin the edge, and then let the rest of it be the top half of the fascia and fly rafters. Earlier I mentioned that this Helgen corrugated siding has great surface detail but is rather on the thick side. Anyway, that's a double-edged sword. It's nice being thick because it doesn't need a lot of support, but also the edges, if that was allowed to overhang, it would look horrendous. So what I've done is I've thinned the edges down by repeatedly scraping with the corner of a razor blade. So now the visible edge is a lot thinner, and I'm just getting strips of scale 2x8 and I'm building subfascia and fly rafters, which will hide where it goes thicker. Well, I've got all these subfascia and fly rafters on all 3 roofs. Also on the double-story roof I've put the rafter tails in because it's possible they might be able to be seen. The other 2 would be impossible, so I haven't bothered. These 2 roofs can now be installed. This one I still need to detail a lot more. I've also put the coping stones on the parapet walls. I need a chimney for a fireplace. I've got this very nice cast one from Tichy, which I was thinking of putting in. Needs to go there, in the corner of the manager's office. I'm not sure it's really tall enough though. So what I'm going to do, instead of using this one, I'm going to build one out of some DPM pilasters. Well, I made my chimney. I cut it in half and there's enough here for another one, for another structure. So I shall just toss this in my box of structural detail parts. I found a few vents from a Walters roof details kit. I put the masking tape on to simulate tar paper, and I think that annex is just about done. Well, rightly or wrongly, these three sub-assemblies are now permanently glued together. I've also glued this roof in place, so that is really secure. This roof is going to need to be removable at least until the end of the process. I might leave it removable indefinitely. I've also added an extra layer of styrene under the foundation to lift it up just a little bit. It means that when I attach it to the dump shed, I'm going to have to notch the bottom of the concrete block. Well, I've modified the track so that I can have room for a decent foundation for the dump shed, and here it is. The sub wall sticks out beyond the bottom of the blockwork, and that just fits in that slot there, and it will bed down quite nicely. So what I've got to do now is just get the foundation attached to the benchwork in exactly the right location. Alright, so there's my foundation for that wall. My next task is to build some of these dust collection systems here. I already have a detail part from a kit to represent that. I've got these two cylindrical tanks to do. So I started off with some PVC pipe sections. So the first step is to put a styrene wrapper, and I'm going to do that out of this 5/1000 sheet because that will bend around nice and tightly. I'm going to super glue that on, let it set up, and then I'll be able to attach other styrene details. So I'm going to go away, do that, and I'll be right back. Here's the one part of the dust collection system. I have no idea what this cylinder actually does, but I followed it fairly closely. 3/4 inch PVC pipe with a 5/1000 styrene wrapper. I put that rib around it to break up the monotony, since it's visible in the photograph anyway. A plain styrene cap and a piece of square tube cut on an angle. Here's the cyclone vent that I modified from a Walters detail kit. It's supposed to go on the building this way with the rectangular outlet against the building, but I needed it sideways, so I installed it 90 degrees from where it's supposed to be, which meant that the intake pipe was in the wrong orientation, so I had to cut that off and re-glue it. I've also added a frame to the bracket. Here's the rest of it. Quite pleased with the way this turned out. It starts off with a cylinder from 1/2 inch PVC pipe with 4 styrene bands and a cap. On top of it you can see there's a whole lot of equipment that I've followed fairly closely. I've got a maintenance platform, I've got titchy railings, a couple of titchy brackets, and one that I just built from strip styrene because I only had 2 left. The ladder is from Central Valley. Base I worked on upside down, starting from here and going downwards. Square of 10/1000 styrene. The cone is half of a 5/1000 styrene disc folded around and spliced at the back. The outlet pipe, piece of sprue, the frame built from various sizes of strip styrene. I didn't have any angle sections, so I made my own by combining 2 strips. The pipe here is a piece of sprue, the rings being slivers cut from a piece of styrene tube forced over it and glued. For the outside staircase that I've been talking about, I'm going to be using Central Valley steps and ladders. They do this rather nice open tread staircase, which I rather like, so I'm going to use a piece of that. and a piece of the wooden handrail. The rest of it I'm just going to cobble together from styrene strip. Okay, so the outside staircase has now been built. I started off with a concrete slab, which I put at a slightly lower level than the rest of the foundation, just for a little bit of interest. The deck is a piece of styrene sheet that I had already planked. The leg is a piece of 6x6 styrene. I built up the rest of it at a scale 2x8s. And yes, I did put in all the joists underneath it. The post actually goes through a hole in the deck instead of being two separate pieces. That way the handrail's a lot stronger. I'm thinking I might add onto the top of here and put a little porch roof over the door. I haven't decided on that yet, but if I do, it'll just be a case of another piece of 6x6 stacked on top of there, a piece of this same corrugated siding, a slightly lower level than this one, and then a frame out of 2x8s. Well, yesterday was pretty productive. As you can see, I've got the safety railing around the top. Final decision was to put this contraption over this side as it was originally planned. I found I didn't have enough of this railing to go all the way around the other side of the tower as well, so I had to stop it short just past the door. So anyway, the head house is permanently installed. I cut a hole for my hand so I can get the door in from the inside. As you can see, I'm no longer at my workbench. The moment I permanently installed the head house, it was too tall to fit under the layout, so I'm using the harbour section as a workbench. Also yesterday I did some work lower down. Remember I said I was thinking of putting a covered porch over the entry? Well, I've done that. I've also got my loading tubes in. I got this one, comes through the roof there. That'll be the one that they use to load sacks. This one down there for bulk loading of trucks if necessary. Also, if we look around the other side, there is another bulk loading tube here. My reasoning behind this is thinking that this is a fairly tall elevator, so it will store multiple carloads of grain. Maybe this is one of several feed companies owned by the same people, and occasionally they would want to use this to store grain during an off season and then transfer it to another branch, in which case they might want to be able to refill a boxcar. Note that the tube is not over the middle of the track, it comes down the side. That's because this was built before covered hoppers were used for carrying grain. So there'd be another flexible pipe on the bottom which they just put in through the side door of the boxcar. Anyway, I like the way this is looking now. Apart from the two pieces of gutter and some downpipes, and of course installing the windows, that's just about done. So I am going to go away and start painting it. I will check in with you again later. Welcome back. I spent a couple of days getting the structure painted. There's no weathering on it yet, and of course I had to work out here in the other room. Since it's basically all over grey tones, I used a slightly different shade for the block work as I did for the poured concrete. I decided to do all the machinery in green, since that's a fairly common colour for machinery anyway. And then while I was doing that, I decided to pick out all the details in the same colour, and I'm going to use that same colour green in the sign as well, so that's going to be a corporate colour now for this company. Well, here is the structure after a couple more days. Most of the weathering has been done. I've also got the dust collection systems glued permanently onto the building. Well, that's all I've got time for in this segment. There's still a whole load of details to add, but I'll show you those when I do the reveal in part 3. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.